I've been thinking about this quite a bit. We've gone through a really terrible year or two or three. It's been a lot of upheaval. And with the pandemic shutting everything down, and with people being so angry. And I don't know about you, but for me, I am so tired of having to deal with fear and with um, aggression, with anger. It's worthless, it's tiring, it doesn't advance us. So why do it? Why participate? This pandemic will be over soon. 100 years ago, they had World War I, which was the most violent and costly war, costing human lives. I think 5 million people were killed. It was a very, very devastating war. But at the end of that war, there was the pandemic. And the pandemic killed 50 million people, 10 times as many people as World War I. And it lasted for 2 years. And it came in 4 waves. The first wave was deadly. The second wave was more contagious, but not quite as deadly. The third wave was very contagious, but not as deadly as the third. And the fourth wave was just the common flu, which we've had to deal with our whole life. This is following the same pattern, which I guess offers us hope because it's going to end. And I think it's going to end pretty soon. Of course, I'm always an optimist. One of my secrets to being happy and finding peace in this world is that I'm an optimist. I always think things are going to turn out well. I think when we start focusing on negativity, upon those people around us who are so loud and boisterous and grating, their energy is so gnarly, and they get in groups and then they gather themselves in groups so that it can be even better, then where are we and what are we? Are we part of them? The enlightenment process says that we need to be different than everyone else in the world. We need to realize our spiritual nature. You just wake up, but you wake up consciously by setting your intention and your will and opening your heart as fully as you can to that loving, powerful presence that is your true nature. It's difficult to feel that true nature when you're surrounded by people and places and events that present just the opposite feeling. You watch the news, and the news tells you everything that's going wrong. It pulls up the worst in human nature and pretends that that's the truth. Many years ago, I took a class in the Tarot, which I really enjoyed. And there's a card in the Tarot called the Devil card. And that Devil card is this dark black background with this monster with like bat wing type thing. And it's Terrible is holding a torch in one hand and is sitting on half of a cube. And to that half of a cube is a male and female representing emotion and desire, and how our emotions and our desire keeps us attached to this half of a cube. And it's so dark. And the creature is making a sign like this is all there is. But he's sitting on half of a cube. In the tarot, a complete cube represents complete knowledge. So this creature is sitting on half of a cube, telling you that this is all there is, holding you there with your desires and your emotional attachments, your fears, your angers, all of that stuff. But that's just half. We go through life thinking that that's all there is, because our parents and our friends and the society that we were raised in is not enlightened. They're caught up in that dream, which the Indians refer to as Maya. It's the river of illusion. In reality, there's just God. In reality, that's all we are. But we have a really interesting task as a soul. We come from that oneness and we drop into duality, where we experience reality. Now, I'm going to let you know that your reality is your reality. It's nobody else's. We think everybody shares the same reality as we do, but they don't. How could they? They come from different families, different social, economic backgrounds. They come from different religions, political beliefs. They also have different past lives than you. And so even though you may be, for instance, you may be an identical twin, but that other being has a different reality than you do. Their life is different than yours. Everyone is different. We're all on a journey through eternity. We're all just trying to find our way back home into the light. And we can do it in this life because all we have to do is set our priorities. I was talking to a friend of mine. They were asking about, spiritual names. And I said, in my experience, when I meditated on the chakras and I got to the heart, I realized that everything from the heart down had to do with physical, with the mundane. It had to do with your life, your relationships, your jobs, your aspirations. You get so caught up in that. But that's only half of the cube. There's another half from the heart up that deals with the non-physical. In spiritual communities, many times a teacher will give a student a spiritual name. And that name is to be used when you're in a community and around people who are wanting to develop themselves spiritually. In other words, they're turning their attention away from the everyday life. And for the time that they're going to be using the name, they're focusing on that part of their being, waking that part up. We don't need to wake up the other part. It's already woke up. But when we start to wake up to the higher nature, when you first start to meditate, you start in your heart, and then you kind of move up to your throat, your third eye, and then up to the crown. And then you start looking at all of it. So a spiritual name is usually used while you're doing something spiritual, like attending a Sangha meeting or hanging out with people from your lineage. Your everyday life name is your old name. It's not a good idea, in my mind, to use your spiritual name like in your professional business where people are in the lower chakras. They're in the chakra from the heart down. But when you're around people that you're dealing with from the heart up, you should pay attention to your spiritual nature. So today, to get away from all of the fear and the anger and all of the really horrible vibrations that are going on with some people who are just so caught up in these lower worlds, these lower hell worlds. They focus on them all the time. They're so violent. Maybe not physically, but they're violent with their language. They're violent with their attitudes. And we're around these folks. We run into them in the street, run into them at the store. And it's easy to just get caught up in that. But I'm here today to remind you that you have this other part of your being. That when you awaken to your spiritual nature, as you meditate, as you pray and seek enlightenment for yourself and for others, as you contemplate spiritual books and spiritual teachers and spiritual videos in this day. My gosh, this day is so beautiful. You know, you can get on the internet and on YouTube and you can find all kinds of amazing, wonderful, enlightened teachers. They're just right there. How amazing. It's all here for you. But do you want to focus on the 6 o'clock news, or do you want to focus on, say, Moji or Gangaji or somebody that's really alive and alive? What you focus on, you tend to become. So why are you focusing on this negativity? Why are you focusing on poverty? Why are you accepting your lot in life by being a victim instead of proactively trying to do something to increase your spiritual awakening? I know it's hard. I know it's really hard when you're surrounded by anger and you're caught up in it. I know it's hard when everybody around is so fearful and aggressive. And you feel like you just have to put shields up all around you all the time. Oh, I got to breathe in the negative, bring out the positive. Oh, it becomes a battle. It's not a battle. It's a dissolution of the self. It's dissolving. As this wakes up, it's dissolving what's below. Tantra is the reconciliation of opposites. In America, they think Tantra workshop, which is generally by most Americans is some sort of a sex thing. Not at all. True Tantra deals with the reconciliation of opposites. It's taking the lowest vibrations that you have and bringing them into the highest and just turning it over. And it's bringing the highest into the lowest. Enlightenment is not just getting away from the world. Enlightenment is not escaping and not coming back here. Enlightenment is having the experience of oneness and then taking that experience and consciously bringing it into your everyday world. Consciously looking at these energies and reconciling them. The guru on the mountain is enlightened. He sees, he travels, he sees the world, he does all this stuff all in his cave. But he's only half enlightened. One day he gets up and he goes down into the village. And there he's met with all kinds of things, dogs and kids and drunks and people arguing and screaming and crowdedness. Then after you get through that, you walk all the way through town, you get to the garbage dump where people are fighting over garbage. When he can keep the same enlightenment that he had in top of the mountain away from everybody, and he can keep that enlightenment all the way down into his everyday life, into the lowest parts of his being, then he's fully enlightened. Anyone can go into a cave or stay in a meditation for years, but it's not until you come bring that energy and that awareness back into this expression, in this body, that you're fully enlightened. And I'm not taking anything away from the people who are enlightened in the cave. Not at all. I'm just saying there's another part. What a lovely little dog. Can you find peace in this moment? Can you dare to open your heart? And from that place, commit your life, commit your essence to spirit. Realizing that your days here are numbered. They are. So how are you going to spend them? Are you going to continue to focus on the negativity, to focus on all that's going wrong with the world? Are you going to continually focus upon religious leaders or political leaders or sports heroes who are not enlightened? What are you focusing on? There's so many teachers out there. There's Michael Beckwith, Jack Kornfield, so many enlightened teachers. You can be enlightened too. In enlightenment, there is no fear. There's no judgment. There's just an unconditional love, where you constantly see God in everyone and everything. And there are moments when you don't, but soon the higher nature takes over again. That sleeping giant that has been inside of you has awoken, and now it's coming to life and it's starting to exert itself into your everyday world. You're given opportunities to find your peace in the middle of chaos. Where 100 years ago, the terrible war, followed by an incredibly deadly pandemic, ended, and it was followed by the warring 20s. So what we have coming ahead of us is the warring 20s. It's going to be really quite a wild ride, I think. Why not think that way? The world isn't going to end. If everybody gets killed and everybody dies at once, I'll be the first one to come up to you and say, I guess I was wrong. But really, I misquote him all the time, but Mark Twain said, "The worst things that ever happened to me never did." How is your present moment? Are you in a warm place? Do you have food? If you do, you're fine. Everything here is transitory. Everyone here, everything comes and it goes. In the end, nothing remains except the divine, which you are. Wake up. It's so beautiful from my point of view. You are so beautiful. So I suggest that you focus on the light. That if you're feeling so down that you can't focus on the light and your meditations are just not going anywhere, that maybe you listen to a couple of videos. I've named off several people. They're all over the place. Find one that suits you. Seek God with all of your heart. Pray for the veil to be lifted. Pray to the divine that you awaken, that this cloak of despair and anger and frustration and fear be lifted from you, so that you can live a divinely inspired life. It's your true nature. All of this is just an illusion. In the coming weeks, I'm going to be restarting my weekly meditations. My talks. My talks are meditations. If you're with me right now, you have no thoughts. And yet I talk. So let's start to awaken up our higher nature. If you haven't been meditating lately, or if you haven't meditated at all, I suggest you start in your heart. Spend some time just focusing on your breath, your heart. Then let's awaken up our divine will. So that we experience the divine realization of Om. Becomes like a circle. Seek to awaken your spiritual nature. We don't need to meditate on the lower chakras. You've got those developed. Let's wake up here. Let's focus for a while on being up in the mountain. Let's focus on that cave where we can go to in our meditation, and we can sit there and just block out everything and everyone and every memory and every emotion, and just move into that space of vastness. And then when we have that completely awakened as much as we possibly can, now we go back down into the world. See how you deal with angry people. How do you deal with people who are in pain? How do you deal with people who are so caught up in limitation they can't even rub two pennies together? They're so caught up in poverty. How can you deal with them from an enlightened point of view? You'll figure it out. It's a good year. This is going to be a year of great awakening. Why not believe that? Why not realize that this is the year of your awakening, of your self-realization, of the dissolution of the old self and the realization of who you truly are? It's always been there. You've always been enlightened. You've just been asleep. Let the divine love, unconditional love, guide your heart. Animate your consciousness and shine the light on the path you need to walk. Namaste.